Welcome to another video for event organizers. If you deal with cash payments at your event, I highly recommend you to watch this video where I'm going to talk about the preparation you need to do way advanced of the event, the preparation you need to do a few weeks before the event, and of course, the steps you need to take during the event while you are intensively using your cash. All of this so that you avoid catastrophe after the event. Now, this is another video of the whole organizer's checklist. You have access to this checklist if you scan this QR code. No email, no sign up, nothing is needed. You just get direct access to this so you can see what else is in that checklist. So let's get started. Now, the starting point is the budgeting planning that you do ahead of the event. I made a few videos around the budgeting part, so I'll leave you to watch those videos. But once you understand how much money you deal with at your event and have asked who needs cash, for example, from in terms of your talents that you want to pay, the volunteers you need to pay, as well as how much float you need. Float is basically the cash you have during the event to exchange money, to pay for gas, pay for car, pay for coffee. I mean, that's your float. So you need to sort of sum all of that and maybe add a little bit on top so that you can take that money out of your event. And if you have a small event and you need to take out the 1,000 euro or something like that, that's not a problem. The day before you go to the bank, you just ask for 1,000 euro and you have your money, assuming you have that money on the account. But if you want to have more money, you have if you have, for example, 10,000 euro that you need to take out, or yeah, anything I think about 5,000. It depends. Bank to bank has some different rules and regulations about that. You actually need to let them know several weeks in advance. So make sure at 2 to 3 months before, call your bank, ask how the process works to get your money out so you have that float available. You don't want to come the day before and notice the bank refuses to pay out in such a short notice, and now you can't fulfill all your obligations during the event. So let's say that worked out. You took out your money. Then you want to have one master cash box that holds this money. And you hope, ideally, one person is the main responsible person for this cash box, and it becomes the bottleneck, the bottleneck person for the access to this money. And that's a good thing because you don't want people to be able to go back and forth into this cash box and take money easily. Instead, what you do, you break up the money into who needs how much when. So you prepare these in terms of cash box, in terms of wallets that you prepare and provide to people. Then you know exactly what float you've given to each person. They have that as their ledger. And then when you collect it back there in again, you have much better control to understand what has happened with the money. In terms of spreadsheets, that would look like this, for example. So you have your dates, you have the person who sort of opens the float and then start distributing to the different people. So for example, float for Annegret, float for maybe the teacher needs some have some cash. And once you give out these floats, each of the people should have their own dashboard as well, so to say. So um, each pouch, each box, each wallet should have its own individual ledger that you follow through with. So if I go for shopping, I want to make sure I put that in there. If I gas the car, I want to make sure I put that in there. Pay for lunch, coffee, whatever. All of it is in there. And ideally, all the receipts are in there as well. So at the end, when I come back with my wallet and hand it in, together with the person who is responsible for the main cash box, we sit down and we're like, okay, all of the receipts are in the float. Fantastic. We calculate, we count the money, and we realized it's supposed to be 375 euro, but we have 369 euro, for example, minus 6 euro. Fuck. What do we do now, right? But rather have that realization in small compartmentalized situations than at the end of the event, you have just a bunch of places, things missing. You have no idea anymore who is responsible for that. How should you deal with it? And well, even what can you do at that moment, right? So The tricky part is during the heat of the event, there's a lot of distractions happening. There's a lot of fast movements. You maybe quickly need to go and gas the car and run out because you need to get your talent from one venue to another venue, or you quickly deal with some lunch payments and then forget the receipt, or somebody suddenly come and you don't realize that you just invited somebody that wasn't planned in the budget. And there's so many reasons that where things can easily go wrong. This is why this compartmentalization idea is such an important, powerful tool to not get things too messy. And the same thing with venues. So, for example, for each venue, ideally for each shift, you do the same thing where you sort of clearly track which event is this, what's the starting float, what's the starting money that was in the cash box when you opened up, and then how much money came in for whatever reason. And then you sort of, when you close it, you have an understanding. Okay, I have 380 euro, 100 of that is new money, and you manually count it again. You have 380 euro, fantastic. Your balance is zero. But also here, you've taken some payments and you realize 20 euros is missing. So it's because you compartmentalize again different venues or different entry points have different pouches or boxes or cashiers, so to say. You can have a much better means to sort of figure out who is responsible for it. How do you want to deal with it? Now, again, figuring out who's responsible is it's up to you and your relationship with the people you're working with. Whether you say, okay, now pay me out of your pocket. I mean, you could do that. It depends why that happens, so to say. Um, but one pro move is to think about that you actually put aside a little bit private money or money that you don't need to account for whatever reason, where this doesn't need to make it into the bookkeeping. And it solves so many issues, smaller things. When 6 euros is missing here, okay, just take from this budget. Uh, something as stupid as, for example, you're paying for a parking fee, 1 euro 50. You really don't want to see that in your ledger, because imagine for this 1 euro 50, you might get what, 5 cents, 10 cents back in terms of tax benefits. And for this money, now you have to track the bookkeeping. You're passing it on to your accountant, who is also have to type in every single one of these to handle the accounting. And then on the tax authorities side, they also going over these things sometimes. So like, so much waste has happened for this 1 euro 50, right? So at SwingStep, we often say, like, any invoice under 30 euro, just here is my private money. Here's a pouch for my private money. Just use that. I don't want to deal with that stuff, right? So if you have access to that, that's actually a really comfortable way to just de-stress a lot of these situations. But at the same time, by separating these out, you get a better sense of where mistakes can happen and you can improve your systems. The same thing here, for example, merchandise, and then suddenly it's like 131 euro more money than expected. What happened? And you get an opportunity to sort of go through your inventory of merch and see if something has been sold without being added into the ledger, for example. So you get better, more refined alarms coming up, so to say. So let me quickly interrupt myself to ask you for this favor. Now, I'm committed to take the 19 years of experience I have from this and put it into these videos to share with you as much as I know about organizing events, running dance schools, building teams, running communities, so that you can do an even better job making all of that happening for you. And what could really help me is if you do all this social media magic stuff: subscribe, like, comment, share with somebody that you think could benefit from these videos. You can choose your favorite video or the whole playlist or the organizer's checklist. Anything that spreads the message and the channel will help me tremendously. All right, much appreciated. Back to the video. Next, when it comes to the actually payouts to your talents, for example, you try to find a good time to schedule that in. That alone can be a little bit challenging because you need to figure out when is your talent available, when are you available? Where can you find a quiet moment and place for you to handle this situation? So ideally in that moment, you also talk about the experience, you gain some feedback, you maybe provide feedback. If you, I mean, nothing feels as good as being asked back as an or as a talent for next year's edition right on that spot. You know, you that's the ultimate definition of done a good job in many ways. And you hand over the money. Now, some cultures, um, in some cultures, is a little bit sensitive whether you actually count the money or not. I highly recommend you to find a way to make that discomfort, to put that discomfort away and actually count the money in front of each other, get that agreement. Yes, the amount we agreed on is here before you close that deal. I know in the beginning, I sort of tapped into my Persian culture. It's like, no, no, I trust you. Everything is good. And, you know, I take an envelope at the airport. I actually start counting. I'm like, 400 euros missing from the cash I was supposed to get. And how do you deal with that now? You have to sort of, yeah, was it me? Did I lose the 400 euro from the venue going to the airport? Is it the event organizer? So like, I had to call the person. I'm like, in whatever way I could muster, ask like, hey, is it possible that you not the full amount of the money was in the pouch? And in my case, in that, fortunately, the person was just sitting on with that 400 euro in front of them, and they're like, "Where's this coming from?" And he was like, "Oh, actually, I'm looking at it right now. I'm so sorry. I don't know how that didn't make it into your pouch." And that was resolved in a very simple way. But since then, I maybe even describe this story, but and then like, hey, please count the money in front of me. Let's just have that done. And of course, the more accurate your I mean, the more easy bills you use for that situation, the less you have to sort of stand there and count. For that moment is a little bit awkward. And then get the signature, get the receipt, because that receipt needs to go back into the collection and in the ledger. All of this money goes back into these kind of ledgers that you're dealing with. So if I have been paying for somebody, that needs to go in here. Or if that has been done from the master cash flow, then like these things need to be in one of the ledgers with the receipts collected. And once the whole cash stuff is closed, then you take all of that back to the bank and you put that money back into the bank, and then you have your digital ledger for the whole event. And one of the entry points is then your cash, and then you have a collection of cash receipts or paper receipts and a collection of PDF receipts. You need to store them separately in terms of bookkeeping, but that's something you need to discuss with your accountant or take that expert advice wherever you come from. Now, as you noticed, it takes a little bit of planning and work around in order to do this. I mean, at the same time, it is not rocket science, but mistakes happen so easily. So if you don't prepare for this properly ahead of time, you actually end up having quite a lot of mess after the fact. If you need any more help around the whole cash bookkeeping, again, I'm always happy to help, because then I get to know exactly what challenges you are facing, and I'm going to take that learning and put it in our software, so you get an even better software if you choose to use ours when it's ready. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.